I'll start the day downing a ton of sups and schlonking a few raw eggs, and I call that breakfast. But let's mix it up. Let's see if I can make eating more pleasurable and healthier. Tough ask, but that's exactly what the yoga of eating is all about. It's not a diet, and it's not yoga in the way you might think. He uses yoga to mean a practice that brings one into greater wholeness or unity. And that's what it is, a practice, a way of eating. Though it does start with some yoga poses. Here I am accessing my natural breath, basically just allowing myself to fully inhale and fully exhale, and exploring what that feels like in different positions. Seems like such a small thing, but in our society, we're often chronically stressed, and so we end up holding and tensing ourselves in ways that don't allow us to take time to fully breathe. Getting in touch with your natural breath sets the foundation for the main practice. The short of it is essentially a combination of mindful eating and intuitive eating. As Charles Eisenstein, the author of the book, puts it, it's to fully experience and enjoy each bite of food. And elsewhere he says, eat whatever you want, whenever you want. The idea is to put full trust in the body as opposed to other outside sources telling you what to eat, and to follow your intuition and be mindful so that you're able to sense what your body is really needing. With enough practice, you could potentially become sensitive enough to tell the difference between a tomato picked by a loved one and a tomato picked by a stranger. Seems kind of crazy to think that your sensitivities could become that powerful, but I feel like it's not totally unbelievable considering there are profound things like this all the time. Like, I'm thinking of trackers, stories about trackers who have almost these otherworldly abilities to be able to tell what happened and to be able to track animals in a pretty magical way. He uses wine tasters as an example to show people who are more accustomed to developing that sensitivity. Slowly but surely I began the practice, starting with the breathing and then moving on to mindfully drinking my coffee and eventually eating. During work I tended to rush myself, so I really took time on my off days to practice. Alright y'all, so we've got the grocery haul, we've got the pomegranate, we've got the Brazil nuts, and we've got the cream puffs.
The most delicious thing in the world.
Y'all ready for some ASMR?
Why don't we try it out?
Pretty freaking good. I was eating fewer raw eggs and I started making more delicious and fun food. And when I did eat the eggs, I practiced mindfulness then too.
The yolk on that one actually tasted pretty good.
What the fuck's with the eggs, you might be thinking? Listen, eggs are nutritious and this is the fastest way to get them in. That's it. And then of course there's the supplements, which the book argues don't give your body the information of what it's consuming in order to fully take it in, and are isolated from other components of food that keep nutrition in balance. Both reasonable points, but I still think they're very valuable. Partly I think that because I've been Bryan Johnson-pilled. He's the guy trying not to die. But also because of the data of things like vitamin D, omega-3s, and creatine. It's interesting because both Charles and Bryan have this shared interest in listening to the body. They just have different strategies for doing it. Charles using mindfulness and intuition, and Bryan using extensive bodily measurements, measuring every organ in the body so that every organ speaks for itself. I think ultimately it's a balance where scientific data and direct experience can work together. The choice then becomes a matter of how much you bias towards one or the other. Part of the practice of the yoga of eating is not just about the experience of eating the food, but it's also about what the experience is like afterward. Then next time when you are thinking about eating a certain food, future cast out what it will feel like after eating the food. Moving on, we've got the Brazil nuts. Definitely drier than I was thinking it would be. Apparently you can get your whole daily value's worth of selenium from just something like 2 Brazil nuts. One of the big ideas of the book is that if you change one thing, everything will change. I began to experience this firsthand that as I began intuitive eating, I started being intuitive in other areas of my life. One day I was weirdly craving cold exposure, so I made myself a cold foot bath. Charles talks about applying the same intuition to exercise, which I'm also a huge fan of, and something I practiced a lot when I was doing what I call movement freestyling. The mindfulness aspect also bled into other areas of my life. I started mindfully listening to music, a practice I first came across in the book, Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life for Kids. In our culture, I feel like we're not encouraged to be mindful. Instead, we have our attention split into a bunch of different directions. For example, like at restaurants, you've got music playing in the background, or often a lot of TVs, and you're trying to have a conversation with somebody while you're eating your food, and it's just like all these different sensory experiences happening at once. Now, obviously, there are certain situations where it makes sense sense to have the extra stimulus, like music that adds to the ambiance, or even in a sports bar, having the TVs really adds to the vibe. But it can be a really blissful and joyful experience to fully be mindful of one thing and be present for it. And as Chris Bale, who's a teacher of embodiment, says, "You are already bliss. Bliss is already you, when it is allowed to flow unobstructed, when you give yourself permission to be here unobstructed." It's weird because fully enjoying yourself is one of the most taboo things in our culture. I think a lot of that is because we're scared of our desires, because there's all this shadow, this unknown within them. But I also think that that's where we find our greatest light. What the fuck are we here to do if not to fully experience joy? One big area where we hold back from our joy is with food. Charles says, "We overeat not because we enjoy food too much, but because we do not enjoy it enough." One of the biggest philosophies of the book is that we naturally go toward what we need if we give ourselves enough attention to fully sense it. We don't need to force ourselves or fight ourselves to do what's good for us. My favorite quote of the book is, "The proper function of willpower and self-discipline is to extend wisdom and insight into times of imperfect clarity, to remember and apply the messages of one's inner voice." When I first read the book, my eating speed permanently changed. I wasn't counting chews, 6, 7, or forcing myself to finish each bite before the next. I just had a taste of what eating could be like, and in that aspect, never went back. The book emphasizes that the foods we need are often reflected in the needs of the lifestyle. For example, monks eating light versus people working in society needing denser and heartier foods. He makes the point that most people in today's society probably need to eat some meat in order to be healthy. For myself, it feels very necessary. I'm open to that changing, thinking again of Bryan Johnson, who's chosen to be vegan, aside from the collagen peptides. It just seems unlikely for me in my lifetime for that to feel good. The book paints an idealized picture of what eating meat could look like. The documentary, The Biggest Little Farm, was super awe-inspiring, and showed how magical and different farming could be if we took a different route than the big corporations do. I highly recommend it. I think a valuable experience to have in the context of eating meat is to be able to participate in some sort of butchering. I've butchered chickens a number of times and have gotten a lot from it, but as much as I feel better about myself for having that experience, I do not think you need to have that experience in order to eat meat. Do what you want. As far as the ethics of killing animals at all, the book mainly argues that death is simply a part of life. But considering I entertain ideas like Bryan Johnson's "don't die," I have no problem admitting that I'm a bit speciesist. That being said, I don't think death is bad, I just think the idea of not dying is very provocative and worth entertaining. I think there are aspects of the ways that we eat meat that are very sad, but at least for this point in time, that's not my mission to fix that. You gotta choose your battles. Regardless of how necessary eating certain foods are, like eating meat, it is quite ubiquitous in our culture that people use food as a way to cope and not just for nourishment. One of the big ones is sugar, which he says is a substitute for the sweetness of life. When I first read the book, my main takeaways weren't really about food. A big piece was about willpower, but another piece was how it helped me understand addiction in a new way. It helped me see that drugs, alcohol, reckless driving, sugar are often used as forms of palliative medication, a way to address the symptoms of painful life conditions. It illustrates addiction as a sort of self-medication and a way to function normally within society. Often a better way to approach the addiction, instead of forcing yourself, is to remove the conditions that make the addiction necessary. I'm paraphrasing the book here, but that's basically the idea. When addiction is out of habit, often when deeper needs get met, that's the time to step in with the willpower to refrain from living habitually. But ultimately, the idea that our behavior, whether it's in relation to food or any other area of life, makes sense given our unique circumstances, whether internally or externally, is something that helped me sympathize with myself more and meet my needs better. And I hope some of those ideas help you too.
Now, I can't quite say with certainty that the yoga of eating has made me healthier per se, but I can say I feel a lot more in touch with myself than I did before.
So the question is, am I going to continue practicing the yoga of eating? Right now I'm focusing really intensely, so it makes sense to do things that are efficient, like eating the raw eggs in the morning, but it's definitely had an impact on me. And I think that there will be future periods in my life where I practice it a lot more. I think it's really important to look at our lives and to really ask the question, like, maybe I do want to spend a lot of time intuitively choosing my foods, spending the time really enjoying and savoring moments, like when I'm eating or listening to music or being with loved ones, and asking ourselves what we want to spend our time doing, what we want to accomplish and do in this life. And when we have an answer, to give ourselves permission to fully do it.